Rolling. Today we are going to learn how to edit a video just like this one that you're watching in Adobe Premiere Pro. I know that the Adobe Creative Suite can be extremely intimidating, especially when you're starting out, and the learning curve can look a lot like this. Now, of course, there is a ton to learn when you're entering a new program, but as we get further into the process, it actually becomes a lot easier and we can become a lot more efficient in our process overall. In today's tutorial, I'm going to walk you through my personal way of editing and of course the most important assets of editing a video in Adobe Premiere Pro. Now, because this is a very extensive and information dense video, I've attached a table of contents, so let's take a quick look at that. We're going to go over things such as how to properly import your footage, how to make a sequence out of the footage and what that means, the general workspace, and what the timeline and other windows are in Adobe Premiere Pro, and how to work most effectively within those windows with the in-program tools provided by Adobe. Then we will look over our clips and figure out how to select the right footage to use. We will then look over some of the footage and decide how to choose the right clips. And then of course we must add a song into our video. Shout out to my friends the Kingsmen for providing us with music for today's video. I will make sure you thoroughly understand the process of keyframing, as keyframing is super important in any video editing software. Then we will add a quick cinematic color grade to it, add a few effects, and then finally, properly exporting our end result. If you're a returning viewer or you just came here from our online course, feel free to pause the video right now, go to the description, and click on the time code that corresponds with the portion of the video that you are looking to revisit. This video is not sponsored. However, this is just an introduction to editing. If you love this video and you want to learn more or go more in depth on the editing and creating process overall, definitely check out the link in our description to our online courses, because there we have weeks of training. Either way, this video is going to give you an amazing basis on how to create a video, and I am so excited for you. Not only am I going to be walking you through my process, but I will also be providing you with some footage and project files to go along with this, so you can work alongside me in this process. Feel free to pause and go download those right now in the description. I feel like it's super important for you to have something that you are proud to export by the end of this video. So this is the folder that I've provided with this project. If we open it up, we can see we have a color grade. That doesn't make much sense right now, I know. We have our footage and we have our music and sound effects. So let's click on our Premiere icon and open it up. And you should now be presented with this home window from Premiere Pro. Congratulations, we have officially opened the program. The first thing we're gonna wanna do is click on New Project over here. And you can name this pretty much whatever you want. I'm just gonna name this Premiere with Colin. Next, we wanna make sure we know where it is saved. So let's click on our Browse button here and we'll click on our home folder. That's this folder right here, and we'll use this as our home base for this project. So we'll just click on choose and it will save here. Don't stress out too much about these settings or your scratch disks. As long as these say same as project, you are good. This will just make sure all of your autosave files go into this folder so that you don't lose them or misplace them somewhere in your computer. And that's it, we're good to go. So we're gonna click OK. We made it into the program. Congratulations. This whole setup right here is called a workspace. As you can see around me, we have separated our workspace into its individual panels. Each workspace is optimized for a different editing style. These are not set in stone. We can move these around, we can readjust our workspace to however we feel we want it to be. We're gonna go over each and every one of these real quick, so let's just bring this back. You're gonna notice there are many ways to do practically everything in these programs. It's all gonna be based on preference. But for your convenience, I'm gonna go through multiple ways of each step so that we know our options. Remember, you can move these tabs around, you can resize each panel. This is all 100% customizable. This whole space here is called a workspace. When we go up to window workspaces, Premiere has provided us with a ton, and you can even save this as your own. Enough talking. Let's get started already. Let's import some footage. Let's say you just went out and shot a bunch of footage, you've dumped your files onto your computer, you're super excited to start editing, and you want to take a look at the footage that you got. There are 3 different ways to get those clips into Premiere. First, we can go up to File, scroll down to Import, find our footage folder, and we can hold Shift and select all of our clips. Or we can hit Command A and it'll automatically select everything in the folder, and then we just click Import. I'm going to quickly undo that. The second way we can do it is just double clicking in our project file here. Again, go to our footage folder, select all, or just import the whole folder itself, and now it's going to be nice and organized in your program. Or simply all we have to really do is grab our footage folder and we can drag and drop it into our Premiere. Those are 3 different ways to import footage. I'm just going to quickly also bring in our music because we're going to need that in a bit. And there we go. We have 2 folders. So one of our most important windows comes down here in the bottom left. This is our project window. This is essentially the space that houses all of our files. So as you can see, our footage and our music are now both in our project window. There's a chance that your project window looks a bit different than mine. So we're going to discuss the 3 different appearances of our project windows. And it all has to do with these 3 icons down here. Right now, we are in what is called list view. Orders our footage by one of the properties that we choose at the top here. We can also change the size of our files by using this slider right here. Kind of cool. This organization style is going to be super helpful when we have a ton of different footage because it has different colors and different icons for every different asset that we have in our file folder right now. So you can see the audio looks very different from the video, as will the sequences and other assets. Now, beside our list view, we have our icon view. So we have these big, beautiful folders in our space here. Again, we can use this slider to adjust. Beside that is our property organization. So we can organize these by any of these properties. We just have to go and click on it. I mean, typically I just use name for this. You could use media type, whatever works. Since it's organized by name, it won't let us drag our footage to either side. It is pretty much locked to whatever way you organize it. So once we get into our footage folder, we can actually move these clips around if we like, and we get this really nice thumbnail. If you hover over a thumbnail, you can see a little blue bar pop up, and you can see a little cursor that slides with your mouse. You can use this to preview your footage, which is pretty helpful. And then if you want to reorder different clips, you can just drag and drop these thumbnails around. This could be really cool and very easy to use. If you're looking for a specific clip, it's very easy to quickly point those out. Like this is obviously a shot of me skating. It's very easy to differentiate a shot of me with skates and a coffee scene. It's a very visual representation of what we have. And in 2019, Premiere released a new folder structure. It's called the freeform view. So at first, I didn't exactly know what this was or what the purpose of it was. Let's just drag this out a bit and I can get you a better idea. So this is our freeform. Essentially, it's like creating a folder on your computer. You can take your file and you can drag it anywhere, and you can drag other clips over it. You know, you can create your own timeline in your folder, which could be super helpful. So for example, you could already start to create a scene or a timeline in your folder. You can organize them by look, you can organize them by scene, and then you can also select multiple clips, and you can change their sizes if you want by right clicking, going down to clip size. And if it feels a bit messy, you can select them, and you can clean them up a bit by using align to grid. I mean, it's a very creative way of looking through your footage, and I love the potential that it brings with it. Now, we can also create some sort of order by going over to our reset to grid, and we can go by file name, and we can just clean it all up again if we need to restart. And again, we have a slider to create our different file sizes. So we have freeform, we have icon, and we have list view. Use whatever comes naturally to you. So I'm just gonna go up to my workspaces and hit reset to saved layout. There's also one more icon over here that is insanely important. This is our new item icon. So we can click on this, and there are a ton of video assets that we can use throughout our course of editing, including sequences, adjustment layers. You get the idea. We won't be using this at the moment, but it's important to know that this is here. I'm just going to quickly color these folders to something different so that it's very easy to differentiate. I just did that simply with my keyboard shortcuts. Again, if you want to change your keyboard shortcuts, all you have to do is come up to Premiere Pro, click on keyboard shortcuts, and specifically if you want to change the color capabilities, all you have to do is type in label, and then all of the different colors come up, and as you can see, I've set them to different numbers. For example, I'll just put teal as number 6. I'm gonna have to remove iris because that was set as my 6, and now all I have to do is press 6 and our folder is now teal. Of course, just like everything else, there are multiple ways to do this. If we know we want very specific settings or we want the most flexibility in our sequences, what we want to do is go up to File, New, and click Sequence. As you can see, there's also Command N. A good tip for learning these keyboard shortcuts is as soon as you see one, stop what you're doing and use the keyboard shortcut instead of following through with the clicking method. So we're going to click away and we're going to hit Command N. And as you can see, a new sequence window has popped up. There's a ton of different options here. This is if we have specific footage and, if we have specific export requirements. Our footage doesn't necessarily match the majority of these sequences. So I'm just going to hit cancel, and we're just going to use my favorite method of creating a new sequence. So we want to go to our footage folder. Remember, your clips are organized in a specific way. I'm going to prioritize by name, and then I'm going to take our first clip. We're going to drag it into our empty timeline. And look, we've created a sequence. Now, once we've created this sequence, let's go check out our sequence settings right now. As you can see, our sequence has now adopted our clip settings and is now optimized for this specific clip and type of footage. We are now in a custom timeline. We are in a 24 frame per second timeline, or we can switch it to 23.96. Or if we're in Europe or Asia, we can switch that back to 25, which is the standard. 23.976. Some cameras only record in that. They don't record in true 24. So we're just going to do that for safety. And now we want to make sure our display format matches our frame rate. Please note that your settings are going to be different if you're using the 1080 footage that I gave you. I currently have my raw 6K files in here just to keep this video high quality. But for storage and transferring the files to you, it was a lot easier to create a 1080 version of these files. One thing I want to note is if you color a clip before you bring it into a sequence, it will actually be this color when you drag it in. So we'll color these different colors. And as we drag these into our new sequence, they actually maintain the color that we gave them in our folder. Again, not something we exactly need at this moment, but we'll get to that. Now, I just want to reinstill a note. We're making a video that's, just kind of random. It's just a day in the life, vloggy style. No real effort or importance to this. But if you are creating a video like a wedding or some sort of event recap, a festival, it's really important to make sure you have your footage organized by name before you drag it into the sequence. By default, for some reason, it always starts with frame rate prioritized, and even if it looks like your clips are going from one to your last clip, it might randomly scatter them. So to avoid that, make sure you are organized by the name of your file. If you feel like you're missing other tabs or other windows that you typically use, by all means, feel free to go up to Window and add one of those and drag it into whatever tab you want. And let's hit the spacebar and play our video. So hopefully your video isn't lagging too much. I know that drone shots and certain cameras take a while to play back. Let's look at the tools that we have to help with this. So let's hover over by our program window. The program window is pretty much what we're going to be watching for the majority of the time that we're editing. There are a few very important tools in our program window. If when you hit the spacebar, your video wasn't playing back at regular speed, we might have to adjust the playback quality. Right now, if you look in the bottom right, it says the word full. So let's hover over there and take a look at our options. Now, as you can see, we have a bunch of fractions here. That is our playback quality. If you're having trouble playing these clips back, we could bring this down to 1/16 of the quality because we have a 6K file. And it should play back very quickly, and we still get a relative idea of what we're looking at and working with. And if your image isn't fitting in the window, or if you want to change the size of your program window, we just have to go over to the left here. And as you can see, our clip is now tiny. This will be super helpful when we create new effects, but at this very moment, 10% is way too small to actually see our screen. Yours might be sized differently depending on your monitor size and your footage resolution. Let's just bring it back to fit for now. Again, I just want to make note that this is our program monitor, and it's not to get confused with our source monitor. If you double click your clip, it opens a source program. Now, at this moment, it doesn't look any different than our program window. As we get into making selections and, just editing overall, you're going to see a massive difference. Our source monitor is always going to play the raw clip. Our program window is going to show us the updated version of this clip, whatever the playhead is on. Let's go look at some of the information on our timeline. These numbers right here are our playhead positions. It works by hours, minutes, seconds, and then individual frames. If you want to go to a specific time, all you have to do is type it in and click enter, and it will take you there on our timeline. Or we can also use this as a way to scrub through footage. Or as you see, we drag our mouse and playhead around, it changes our time. We also see a ton of different icons in our program window below our clips. We're not going to go into every single one of these. A lot of them are straightforward. Feel free to play around with them. As you can see, we have our play, our stop, and this one over here called safe margins. This one's going to be important, so click on that really quick, and as you'll see, this grid pops up into our frame. And this is going to be really important for, centering your shot, checking out your framing, or when we're adding titles and text or any sort of asset. If you don't see that right there, come over to the right and click on this plus button. There are actually more buttons here. All we have to do is drag and drop whichever ones we want, and now it will be down here for us to work with. Now that we kind of have a handle on what's going on over here, let's get back into our project window. There is now a green file in a bunch of pale bluish purple files. This green file also has a different icon than the rest of our clips. That is because this is our sequence. As you can see, it has adopted the name of the clip that we've dragged into our sequence, minus the .mov. This can lead to a lot of problems and confusion. So what we want to do is make sure we click on this and we either drag it into a folder above, or we just drag it out to the left and it'll automatically place it in the uppermost folder. So now it's not only just out of the Blackmagic footage folder, it's out of the footage folder entirely. And now we have our sequence here. And let's change the name of the sequence to clips. We're going to go click down on this bin here and create a new bin. We'll name that sequences. One thing to consider, if you are mixing a bunch of different footage, this video is not going to play the exact same as the screen recordings do. So what I do is I put those into different sequences so that their rendering is optimized for that type of file. This current file is way different than the file that is on right here while I'm recording. So I use different sequences for this in this section of my editing. I hope that makes sense. Alright, so let's finally get into talking a bit more about this timeline. So the timeline is your time in a line. It should be pretty straightforward. There's a chance that your timeline looks a bit different. Maybe you're just seeing numbers without all of these zeros, which means you are just seeing the frames and not the time code. The way we fix that is we go up to our sequence settings. I'll change it to frames so that you can see what that looks like. And I'm just going to hit Command Z to undo that and change it back. So as you might have noticed, the video clip we dragged in went to this layer right here. The top half of our timeline is for video. You might notice that there is a V1, V2, V3, and the bottom half is our audio track, which is noted by the A1, A2, A3. Now these numbers can go all the way up to 99, I believe. Some people post how crazy their timelines get and how many layers they have. I'm going to drag another clip in. You don't have to follow this per se. I would watch and listen for this part. So we want to make sure when we're dragging clips into our timeline that we have both this V1 and this A1 highlighted. I'm going to drag this clip above our initial clip. If you drag this video clip down, it becomes destructive, which means it will delete the rest of this video clip. But if we just stack our video layers, they're just on top of each other, and you're just going to see the topmost file. I'll prove this to you by going over to this eyeball. We use this tool to hide layers. Our first video clip is still there underneath, but if we drag our clip down to it, it just doesn't exist anymore. The audio is also going to be destructive if you drag one clip on top of the other, but if they're just stacked, it will actually play both pieces of audio at once, or however many layers you have active. If that's an issue, we can go over here. You can mute multiple tracks at once, or you can just solo the track that you want to listen to, and that will automatically mute every other track except for that. This will start to make a bit more sense when we get into our editing with our music. Don't feel like you're stuck with this size of layer. We can actually drag these out to whatever size we want. So drag your audio layer out a bit, and then drag your video layer up, and it gives us a little preview of our clip, which is cool. Premiere has set it up that if we double click in these columns, it will automatically expand or collapse. As we drag the audio, we get a better idea of our waveforms. Now let's take a look at these highlighted V1s and A1s. These are important. These are essentially a traffic control. If we deactivate V1, for example, we cannot drag video clips into our program, but we can drag the audio layer in because the audio layer is highlighted, and vice versa. We can't drag a clip's audio in if the audio is not highlighted, but we can drag the video layer in on top. That could cause a lot of confusion if you don't know what's going on and you can't get your clips into your timeline. Now, as you can see, we have this second V1, which is highlighted, and we have A1, A2, A3 highlighted. This is for pasting and inserting clips. When we paste or insert a clip, it prioritizes the smallest number that is highlighted. Let's activate V2 and deactivate V1. Notice that our audio layer is still active as A1. If we hit paste here, our audio layer prioritizes A1 and our video layer now prioritizes V2. If we have both V2 and V1 selected, it will just paste to V1. And it's the same thing with the audio. If we deactivate A1, it's going to paste to A2. We can lock our layers if we need to hold the position, and that way we can't accidentally destruct a video or audio clip. It becomes super helpful when we're working with music. Again, if we want to have just our music locked off into position and we're editing to it, it's super helpful. Now I'm going to start expanding our toolbar so that we can talk about it. These are all of the main tools that we're going to use in our timeline. Now that we have a clip in here, they are active and we can start using them. And beside our tools, you can see a few more icons underneath our timecode. So this first one, we don't need to talk about. We're not going to worry about our insert and overwrite right now. Let's focus on this magnet and our icon for linked. This magnet represents snapping. So imagine if our clips were magnetic and we want to drag them in and keep them close together. As long as our magnet is activated, it will automatically drag and drop it right beside our other clips. It makes it easy for rearranging once you have your selections and such. If you decide to remove it, as you can see, it becomes a lot more difficult. But hey, that might be necessary. It's not always helpful to have your clips snapping to each other. And here we have our linked selection icon. When this is activated, our video and our audio layers will stick together. So it doesn't matter where we drag it on our timeline, they will stick together. But if we deselect it, we can individually move our video and our audio layers. This red box will now pop up and tell us how far apart they are, which is super helpful if we do this by accident. And then you can just line them back up. Over here is our marker tool. As we click it, it will automatically set a marker to whatever is selected. If nothing is selected, it will set the marker in our timeline. Then we have our markers tab over here where we can adjust the duration of the marker, where we can adjust the name of our marker. We can adjust the text that pops up. And I feel like this green is a little bit too dark. And there we go. We definitely don't need this at the moment, so we're just going to delete that. So we don't need this entire clip. We're not going to use every second of it. So what we are going to do is select our favorite part of the clip. This process is referred to as making selects for obvious reasons. When we're editing, we don't typically use the entire clip that we've shot. We're not perfect, so what we do is we make selections of our footage. It's important to make selections, that way we have a concise bank of footage to work with. We don't want to be going through all of our footage every single time we try to add a clip. That would be absolutely redundant and ridiculous. And of course, there are many ways of making selections. So let's get into that. Some people like to make selections before they even import their footage. You can just find your favorite clips, you can rename them or just set a highlight on them, or you just drag in the whole favorite clip. I found that this process can be extremely long and tedious. Other people like to make their selections in their footage folders by scrubbing through in the icon view and reviewing their footage before they drag it into the timeline. And then they just select the clips they like and drag them in. So let's go back to talking about our source monitor. Now, no matter what selection we have in our clip, the source monitor will always show the full start to finish of our clip. Let's click on this clip of pouring coffee. Double click and play out our entire clip. Obviously, we wouldn't need to use a clip that is this long, and by the end of the clip, it's out of focus. So we're going to use this as an example to make a selection from our bin. To make a selection, you have to set a physical in and out point. So we're going to scrub and find the spot. I like where we start to get a bit of movement in the frame until approximately here. So in Premiere, we have the physical marker points right here. And if we drag back over here, this is a good spot. So we'll hover over and click mark in point. And then we'll play it back. We'll probably only need this much, so we'll just trim our out point again. Remember to hover over these and look at the keyboard shortcuts. So to mark an out point, all we have to do is push the letter O, or if we're marking an in point, we just have to hit the letter I. And now we note that this is the in point and the out point. That's the clip that we want. And again, of course, we have multiple options on what we want to do next with this. As you can see, there's a little video icon and an audio icon. If we want, we can click and drag just the video into the clip, or we can drag just the audio into the clip. Or there's options here to insert our clip, which we can just hit comma, or overwrite our clip. Let's quickly talk about the difference between those two. This is all going to be based on our playhead. So let's drag our playhead to the middle of our first clip. If we hit insert, it will place our clip where the playhead is marked and split whatever's on the left and right of our playhead. Or if we use our overwrite key, it's going to completely destroy whatever is in the way of the clip. Typically, I don't use this method until we're deep into an edit on a very constricted timeline and I need to add something very specific, like if I forgot a sound effect or to add a piece to an edit that is, trying to fit within a 1 second window. I want to just go back to these highlighted video toggles. We also want to make a note that on the left is our source monitor inserting. So if we prioritize our V1 to the second layer, it's going to paste our video on the second layer, and the same with audio. Doesn't matter if we insert or overwrite. So here you can see we can overwrite without actively destructing our clip. All we have to do is make sure that we have the appropriate video and audio layers toggled. And I use a 6K clip and a 2K clip just to show you the difference of stacking these. Now that we've made these in and out selections, we can hover back over to our thumbnails and see that the blue bar in our thumbnail has now shrunk. That's because it is now just our selected portion. So we can go ahead and anytime we drag and drop this in the future, it's only going to be the parts that we just selected. And you can see how this would be useful if you accidentally delete a clip and you don't want to have to go remake that selection again. And again, I just want to note you're going to be working with 1080p footage, so you won't have these resizing issues. The reason I set myself up for this, just so I can show you a few examples in the near future. Now, I prefer to make my selects on a timeline, especially if you're editing something that has to go in a chronological order, like a wedding or an event recap. If you're going from day to night, I find it way more helpful to just put all of my footage into the timeline and make my selections there, because all you have to do is hit play and you can sit back and watch. You don't want to be clicking through every single source monitor to make these selects and then have to also drag them into your sequence. So let's just be biased and we'll use this method by dragging all of our clips into our timeline. Again, make sure your footage is sorted by name and not frame rate. So the majority of our clips here are playing back in slow motion, but you might notice that some of them are playing in real time. When you're making selections, sometimes it's easiest to have each clip at the exact same frame rate. If we go over here and we look at our organization and frame rates, we have some that are 24, some that are 50, and then some that were recorded in 120, but are playing back at 24 frames per second. This can cause a lot of confusion, and sometimes it's easiest just to have everything playing at the exact same frame rate. So there's one way that we can modify this before we start our timeline. All you gotta do is select all of your footage, right click, go to modify, and click interpret footage. Now, as you can see, it's automatically selected to use the frame rate from the file. But if we go to assume this frame rate, we can change every single clip to be 24 frames per second. Some of the clips will have doubled in length, so it's important to do this before you drag all of your footage into the sequence. And now we're just going to select all of them, and we're going to drag them into the sequence. And now if we play back, we can see that everything has been converted to 24 frames per second and converted to slow motion. Now, if you shot a clip in a higher frame rate and you just wanted to individually retime that, we can do that as well. All we have to do is highlight our clip. We can either go up to clip, speed, duration, and click that, or as you saw, we can just hit Command R and it'll pop up. If we right click, go up to speed, duration, we will be presented with this window. So now we see our speed and the percentage. Now, depending on how many frames you have, there are different ways to manipulate this. So for example, if this was a 48 frame per second clip in a 24 frame per second timeline, we could slow it down to 50% of its normal speed. As you can see, that doubles the duration of the clip. If we have a clip that is 60 frames per second in our 24 timeline, we can slow it down to 40%. Or if it's something like 120 frames per second, we can slow it down to 20%. But we did this in our project folder so that anytime we go to use these clips, they are already slowed down. If, for example, you have clips with a lot of audio, I wouldn't suggest converting those to 24 frames per second. You don't want to mess up the audio of a clip. Now let me show you why I brought 6K footage and 3K footage into the same sequence. I'm going to go up to my sequence settings and quickly adjust this to become a 1080p timeline. So we're going to type in 1920, the other tab 1080. As you can see, our aspect ratio is confirmed to be 16:9, so we can just hit OK. This clip has now zoomed in a ton. If you're working in a timeline with different types of footage, there's a chance that you're going to have footage of different sizes. For example, if you shoot drone in 4K and you only shoot 1080 on your camera and you're trying to work with them in the same timeline, this is how we're going to adjust these clips. So we're just going to select all of our footage and then we're going to right click. There are two different options here. We have set to frame size and scale to frame size. So if we click on set to frame size, it's going to use the scaling properties to appropriately match it to the amount of pixels in our sequence. So if we take this clip, for example, we bring it up to 100%, we can see where its full resolution is. Now remember, because this is such a high quality clip, we can use this to our advantage and we can move this around to maybe just zoom in on the sign if we want, or just trees, or just the mountaintop. So there's a big benefit to setting your footage to the frame size. But alternatively, let's hit undo, select all, right click, and we hit scale to frame size. It changes our scale property to 100% no matter how big or small your clip was. It's a bit of a disadvantage because we're going to have to check the metadata if we want to know how much we can zoom in and keep quality. But this method is super helpful if we're going to copy and paste properties. This will make it a lot easier if we're applying the same effect on multiple clips. For the sake of this video, I'm going to scale it so that my clips are all at 100% because your clips are all resized to 1080p. Our two main tools are going to be our selection tool and our razor tool here. It's pretty straightforward. Our selection tool is going to select our clips. We're going to use it to move around, whereas the razor tool is going to slice our clip for us. And then we'll be using our selection tool to grab our new clip and move that around in our project. I'm just going to quickly undo that. So how I make selections is I hit play, I find my favorite part of the clip, and I drag just that onto our second video layer. And then eventually we will delete the clips around it. Now, before we get any further, I'm going to introduce you to one of the most important set of tools that Premiere has developed. These are the ripple tools. The ripple tools are hands down one of the most effective ways of editing in this entire program. So if I made my selection here and I want to get rid of these two clips on either side of it, I would highlight them both, and instead of clearing them and just leaving that gap, use ripple delete, and it will remove those spaces and compress our timeline for us. So example, even if we just clear this clip, we can then ripple delete the gap that is left, and it will snap our clips together like the magnet tool effortlessly. Ripple delete is going to snap our clips based on where the first collision is. As you can see, our audio layers are touching, but if we move the audio and video layer out of the way and we ripple delete this gap, it will magnet our clip until it makes contact with something else. We're going to talk about that a bit more later. As for right now, we just want to find our selections and lift them up onto our second layer. So those are your main two tools that you are going to be using throughout this entire process. But let's spend 30 seconds to discuss the tools that I use most, because that could literally save you hours, if not days, weeks of editing. And time is important. If you're using my keyboard shortcuts and we press the letter A, or if you're using the default and you press the letter Z, we will come up with something called the track select tool. What it does is it selects everything to the right of it. This is super useful if we need to make some space. Say if we forgot a clip and we need to drag it into our timeline here. Or if you want to, move some clips around, we'll ripple delete our spaces in between. If you use Shift, you can select everything ahead on a single layer. Or if you want to make adjustments, instead of actually trimming your clips, you can just drag everything in front of it to the end of your selection. The ripple edit tool is hands down one of my favorites. So instead of clicking and cutting our clips, all we have to do is have our ripple edit tool selected, grab the end of our clip, and we can drag it to where we need it to be. It will collapse the space that it was taking up. Next, we have our slip or our slide tool, whatever you prefer to call it. Let's say we have our selection, but we made our selections too fast and we kind of missed the part that we wanted of the clip. Instead of using our ripple trim tool or a ripple edit tool, we can just use our slide tool and get those few extra frames that we missed, and we can drag forward or backwards in time. And now we have a different point of our video in the exact same space. And this is going to be insanely helpful when we're down the road, actually in the middle of an edit, and we need to make some critical changes. And those are my favorite tools. All right, and we are into it. So let's use what we've learned with these tools and make some selections for our video. I'm going to speed up this part of the video for you just so that we can save a bit of time in the length of this video. Go at your own pace. Feel free to pause when we get to the making selections portion and then rejoin us after. For this first draft, you don't have to be super in-depth on your selections. Typically, I will make a first draft and then a second draft. So let's just go ahead and get into this. I'm just going to rearrange my window a little bit. I like to bring my effect controls to the left, and then I have my color grading over here to the right if I need it to see if my clips will work. This is like my power editing mode. All we have to do now is go to the start of our sequence, and we're going to scrub through, find our favorite spots, and make our cuts and lift them onto the second layer. A lot of this is based on rough estimation, so don't worry about being too perfect with this. After we make our selections, we're going to ripple delete all the parts that we didn't use, and we're going to compress it down to a smaller file of just selections, and that's what we're going to use to make our edit. Feel free to just choose your own selections. You don't have to choose exactly what I'm choosing. It might be to your benefit to edit alongside me, but again, this is just a tutorial. You might have completely different footage. Remember, don't feel like you have to use every single clip. A lot of the times I'll shoot stuff and then, it looks cool, but it might not work for this edit. I might use that footage at a different time. I'm gonna set a marker right here because this is our flame. Sometimes I set markers on clips that I know I want to use in specific spots. So maybe I'll see the clip that I want to use first, the clip I want to use second, the clip I want to use on the drop of the song, and I'll set markers there just so that I have a little reminder when I go back. We also have a ton of different angles. We have multiple angles of the same action. We have close-ups, we have wides, we have a very good selection. Don't be shy, you can select all of those if you want and we can make that decision afterwards. For your first round of selections, it's totally cool to select more than what you're going to use in the actual edit. The goal is to compress our footage down to about 10% of what it was. And we did it! We've made our selections. Now, again, remember this is all personal preference. What I do after I have my selections is I go to my sequence, I right-click, hit duplicate, I rename this to selections. Sometimes I'll even recolor the sequence, and then we're going to open that one up. So as you see, we can have multiple sequences open, but we cannot have the same sequence open twice. Our clips is kind of like our backup right now, so it has all of our footage in case we need to scrub through and look at the clips that we didn't select. This is an easy way to pinpoint what we've used and what we haven't. And also if we need to make the selections again, they are now already made. Make sure we have our link selection activated and then click and drag to select all of V1. Then we're going to right click or use our keyboard shortcuts and ripple delete. And look, now we have a way shorter sequence. What I typically strive for my selections is that if I hit play, it almost looks like an edit in itself. That's when you know you've trimmed your selects properly. Feel free to go through a second round. This will take less time and we can just tighten up those clips and find the perfect beginnings and ending. Now, I'm just gonna recolor my sequences here. Now that we have our condensed selects, we're gonna duplicate this one more time just for the sake of this tutorial, and we're gonna name this one edit. And we're going to drag it outside of the sequences folder. So now we always have our selects as our backup. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll take my selects, I'll copy them all, and then I'll just paste them at the beginning or the ending of my clips or footage sequence. And now we have everything condensed into one timeline instead of two, and our project file will stay small. So we are essentially ready to get to our edit. Grab a coffee if you need it, take a stretch break. Ugh. That didn't sound healthy. Now that we have just our beautiful selections of our clips, we are really close to actually making the final edit. The next step that I take after making my selections is finding music. Most of my editing is based on the feel of the music that I choose. It really sets the tone and the pace and the feeling of how our footage is going to work with it. It's quite a harmonious process. Not only does music give us the sense of our pacing and editing style, but we also get a visual of our physical waveform, and that's going to help us make accurate, calculated decisions on making our cuts. Now would be a good time to take another break if you need it. I just went ahead and I made a cleaner, condensed version of our selections. This way, it's going to require very minimal editing when we actually go to make the final product. There are so many different types and styles of editing, and I go over those in different videos. But today we're just going to go with a linear, cinematic, vloggy style video. We're going to go chronologically for the most part, but we're just going to do the coffee sequence because it is the most straightforward. I love these other scenes with the skating. Feel free to definitely do that. We have way too much footage because we're only making a 15-second video today. Now, I wanted you to go through this process so that you have multiple options in making an edit. So we have a few different scenes here. Our next step is to work with the audio. So we don't typically need the audio from these other clips because we're going to be using music. So feel free to go ahead, unlink selections is off, highlight all of the audio and just hit clear. Now, if we really needed to go get audio, we can always do that afterwards by going to our source monitor and just dragging the audio into our video. Like this, for example. This is us in the future and we're dragging a sound effect into our video. All right, now it is time for us to add our music. I'm gonna use the song Caretaker by our friends Kingsman. Now that we have our audio file in Premiere, notice these bars on the right side. This is our audio levels. If you notice, when we hit space, this is gonna show us how loud the audio is. The goal is to have our audio below the 0, just slightly. Once it hits above 0, it means we are clipping and the sound's just going to be compressed and it's not going to blend well with sound effects, and it's theoretically just too loud overall. Now, because this one is clipping, we can expand our audio level here. This line is actually a control for our audio. So we can drag it down a few decibels, and now you can see we're no longer clipping. We're in the yellow, but we're not in the red. If you want to adjust the entire audio clip very quickly, all we have to do is click G. It will bring up audio gain. And here we can either add a positive or a negative number. So instead of moving around with that layer, we can just type in -6 and hit enter. And as you can see, our waveform has now shrunk. Remember that we can resize these columns by double clicking. So let's go ahead and do that. Premiere has structured it so that when you double click on the layer, it expands to the minimum size required for this little diamond and set of arrows to appear. This is called a keyframe. Keyframes are so important to this entire editing process. I cannot emphasize that enough. So we're going to use this as an opportunity to introduce you to what keyframes are. Maybe you already know what they are, but we're just going to show you how we're going to apply them in a situation like this. A keyframe essentially holds a specific value at a given point in time in an animated sequence. So at this point in time, for example, this is at negative 5.3 decibels. If we want to make a graduated change to the volume, we have to set a keyframe at the beginning, and then the volume will gradually increase to the amount that we set with our original keyframe. There's a calculated change in the audio. We should probably remember the effect controls. The effect controls is essentially the house of keyframes for any of our video work. To keyframe any of our properties of our video, all we have to do is click on the stopwatch beside that property. So if we click on this scale property, as you can see, this blue diamond has now appeared on the screen. We can scrub forward in time, and we can set another keyframe either by clicking on the set keyframe button, or as long as there's already one keyframe started, we can just make the adjustment ourselves and it will automatically drop a keyframe for us. I'm just going to scale up in between to show you a little bit of a ridiculous animation just to get an idea of how we use these. So we'll just scale in a bunch and then scale out a bunch. We can individually delete our keyframes by highlighting them and hitting clear or delete. Or if we want to just clear all of our keyframes, we can just click on this stopwatch. Note that the circular arrow we have over here on the side is our reset button. So if we had changed the scale of our video or changed any property, we can always just reset it back to its default value by clicking that. And we can also use that while keyframes are activated. This is the reason why we set to frame size earlier. Because remember how scaled in our clip was at 100% when we set it to our frame size instead of scaling it to our frame size. Now that we're getting into effects and color grading, I feel like this is the appropriate time to bring up something called rendering. Now, rendering refers to the actions which convert our source material into their final footage, which essentially means it's taking all of our effects and all of our changes to our clip and finalizing it into a video file so that we can play it back smooth when you're editing. Rendering enables us to see what our footage looks like with our added effects. Sometimes we even have to render just in order to see the playback of our footage, depending on the footage you have and the power of your computer. If you're unable to play this back, that's a huge issue when you're editing. You really want to make sure your effects look good because you don't want to have to export the entire video and see little flaws that could have been fixed really simply. So I've queued up a few of our clips here. There are 3 different colors above our clips. We have a green bar, a yellow bar, and a red bar. The green bar means our clips are good to go. Our footage and effects have been rendered and have files associated with that. If it's yellow, it's kind of just a caution. So it's reminding us that we don't have any render preview files associated with our clip. Premiere will try to render this clip in real time, but there is always a chance of lag depending on the codec of our footage. And red, you're only typically going to see this when we apply an intense effect. For instance, if I take this yellow clip or even this green clip and I add something like warp stabilize, you will notice that there's a red bar that now appears above it. Every time we add or change an effect, it's going to go back to red and we will have to re-render our footage. Keep that in mind as we consider the 3 different ways to render our footage. Our first way to render is if we just want to render our effect. This will only render the clips that have the red bar above them. So all we have to do is hit enter and it should start to render. The red has now turned to green, but the yellow has stayed yellow. So if the codec isn't too intense, your whole clip should be able to be played back. The in and out method works really well, whether you want to render just a portion of your video or if you want to render the entire thing. So we just want to go up to menu, sequence, render into out. This is the one I use most commonly. Choose a small portion of our edit, or if you don't set an in and out point, it will just render your entire sequence. And finally, if you're just having trouble with a single clip or just a few clips in your sequence, you can highlight those and let's go up to menu, sequence, render selection. And those are the different ways that we can render our footage. So if you're ever having issues watching your playback, you can lower your playback resolution or you can render your footage. Now keep in mind, when your footage is rendered, you can change your playback quality now to be full because you have actual video files associated with your footage now. So you can watch this back in full quality without any lag. Eventually, if you keep rendering all of your projects, over time, that's going to add up to be a ton of footage. I remember the last time I tried to clear mine, it was 90 gigabytes. Plus, you can always remake your render files if you have to go back to the project. So for that, we have to go to Premiere, Preferences, Media Cache. And then all we have to do is hover over here. We can change a couple of our settings like our maximum size limit, but we're just gonna go over to our delete and we're gonna delete our unused. And after this, your Premiere should run a lot better. Just make sure you keep an eye out for that. And there we go. Okay, so let's get back to our edit. Let's talk about some effects. We can use our keyframes to fade in and out or change values sporadically or randomly, but we could also use effects built into Premiere to create these fades or transitions. Premiere has default transitions already set to your keyboard shortcuts. So for example, if we hit Command D while we have our audio layer selected, it will then fade it in and out for us. We can either fade in and out with our keyframes, or we can just set the effect for the audio. We can create keyframes on the actual video layer on our timeline by using this keyframe button, and we can remove them the same way. These little arrows will take us from one keyframe to another so that we have them lined up perfectly. Or if we hit Command D on our video, it will also create a default dissolve for us. Those are our default transitions. If you're not happy with those or you just want to explore other effects, we have a full effects tab here. So we can type in the word dissolve, and as you can see, there's different styles of dissolve that we can use. We can use cross dissolves between two clips, and they're all calculated differently. Or for audio, we have to use the word fade. As you can see, there's 3 different styles here. So constant power is our default. You can change your default by right-clicking and set default transition. So let's make our music fade in and out. Command D, I typically drag these in and out a bit. The audio at the end can fade a little bit slower. Usually the fade in should be a little bit quicker. Now let's make some room on our timeline and drag all of our clips past our audio. So what I typically look for to get my edit going is a good starter shot and a good ending shot. And then I'll piece it together like a puzzle. So let's scrub through some of our footage and find a good clip for either the beginning or the end. I like this clip. It has a blurred background and it has snow falling in the foreground very subtly. This is really good for like a logo or a title. So we're gonna take this clip and we're just gonna put it on the end of our video. We can either drag it or we can copy and paste it here. And then we'll keyframe it to fade out. Then let's just scale it up a bit. You can see we have a bit of crop from the aspect ratio. And now we can use the waveform to help us guide the length of this clip. So let's just drag it out so that it matches up with the ending. The idea is to take the rest of the clips and then just fill in the gaps on the song based on where the audio waves are. If you don't want to keep dragging and dropping from the end, here's an alternative way to make this edit. So let's open up 2 sequences. We'll have our selections and our edit. Take our edit sequence and we'll drag it to the bottom here. Now let's make some room for our selections and then we can just resize these. So we only need the video clips here, so we're just going to compress the audio layers just so that we see the video. And now we have a bit more room to edit with. So we have the option to either use the footage at the end of our music, or alternatively, because we duplicated the selections sequence, we can now use that as kind of like a drag and drop. So we can non-destructively take a clip from the selection sequence and copy it over to our edit. I find that this works if you need to do some really fast editing. We can really see how much time is left and get a good idea of how many clips we need. As I mentioned, we have way too much footage for a 15-second edit. So I think we're just gonna focus on a scene of making a coffee. I'm gonna select all of my coffee clips. I'm gonna label them to be brown. Brown like coffee. Make our cool wintry shots pink, and then we'll make our skating scenes blue. Now we're just gonna drag our coffee clips down and we're gonna play it out. At the moment, it seems like we have way too many clips. So because it's too long, we're gonna again trim down our selections as much as we can. I'm just gonna delete the clips that we don't think are necessary to the story. I think this clip makes sense to go after this. This pouring clip makes sense to go after he has the cup in the hand. Don't need this, don't need this. Okay, and we'll do a close-up of the mug again with the steam and then drinking the coffee. So here we have our little scene. We have pouring coffee, we light the fire, we put the kettle on the propane tank, we pour the coffee, and then we drink the coffee. And then we're gonna drag it over our music to time it out. So I try to line the clips up with the waveforms, where either when there's a spike in a waveform, we cut to a different clip, or an action occurs. Coffee pour, light, cool. There we we go. That's how easy it was. All we did was we took our selections and we kept narrowing it down until it fit to our length of song. Also, it's super important we give a shout out to our boys Kingsman for allowing us to use their music. They spend hours and weeks on creating a single song, much like I spend on creating a single video. So I super appreciate them allowing us to have creative use of their music for this video. So definitely go check them out. I know you've probably heard a few of their songs before. We can slightly adjust this and we'll line these clips up with the waveforms. So here, for example, delete the edge of this and drag this. Let's drag these two to fit with their corresponding waveforms. Drag these two so that they time properly. Here's a good example of using our slide tool. So I like this clip, but I want to use it a bit further in where there's more steam and we can see the handle of the cup. So we're going to use the slide tool and drag forward in time a bit. Yeah. A lot of people like to cut on the beat, so exactly where you see the spikes in the audio. But I think it's always nice to have one or two clips that are just a bit longer and it makes your edit a little bit less predictable. So we're going to grab the coffee here. Okay, so these all time up perfectly. We're going to keep our coffee pouring shots a bit longer. I think for the ending shots, we should do a bit of a zoom out. Kind of just gives the feel that we're leaving the scene. So let's set a keyframe here for our scaling and position. I'm cool for it to look like this at the very end, but at the beginning, we're just gonna scale in a bit and then reposition it slightly. And it will automatically set the keyframe for us. And then let's do the same for our ending scene. So keyframe here, drag it to the end, scale in a bit and drag it to the beginning. These clips don't have a lot of movement in them, so we can do that in post-production and just create a slow zoom out to make it look cool and fit with more of a flow. Now, as you can see, a couple of our clips have the black bars on the top and bottom of the clip. So what we're going to do is we're going to scale this clip up. And remember, this is the reason why we set to frame size earlier. So if we make an adjustment to one of these, we can click on the motion, we can hit Command C to copy, and then we can paste those effects on these other clips that also have the black bars. So the reason why we would set to frame is so that we can just copy and paste these effects. You also might have noticed that the little FX badge in the top left of our clip changed to the color yellow. This will actually change depending on different effects that you add to it. Now you'll know if you've already applied an effect to it. This is called our draft. We have our clips together to the music, but they're not colored and there's no real effects to them. This is a good opportunity to take one last break if you'd like, refill your coffee. We are going to move into our final touches process. Outside of just editing to the music, to make our videos more dynamic and overall just feel a lot more professional. Now, typically, I would even start with the audio that you have in camera, but unfortunately, because I was shooting in slow motion on the Blackmagic, it does not capture audio while I'm recording. This is very common with a lot of cameras that are shooting in a high frame rate. So we're just going to use a sound effect for today. This will not go nearly as in depth as my sound design tutorial, but I mean, this will definitely get you started in the right direction. So if you haven't imported the sound, definitely go ahead and do that. And then we're simply going to double click on it and open it in the source monitor. We will set our out point and we're just going to drag it down to our audio layer number 2. Then we want to line it up with the coffee pouring shot. And notice this sound effect isn't too loud, but because the audio layers stack on top of each other, for safety, what we should probably do is set some keyframes to reduce the decibels of the music for when the audio comes in. This method is called audio ducking. Essentially, we're making sure our music ducks under our sound effects. And this is a very important thing we have to learn if we want to create a realistic and well-balanced soundscape in our video. We're going to set our first keyframe as our in point, and then we also need to set an out keyframe for our in point, if that makes sense. And then we're going to go a bit further and set our other in point for our out and then our final out keyframe for our fade out. The reason why we need an in point and an out point to anchor our fade in and our fade out is because if we just click between two keyframes, it ends up dragging the entire audio layer. But if we can set an anchor point for our ins and our outs, and then we set a second keyframe, we're able to make a dip in the audio right where we need it. So let's just drag this down a couple of decibels to make up for the added audio. And our sound effect actually might be a little bit too loud too. So we're gonna hit gain and we're gonna do a -6. You never want your sound effects to severely overpower our music. And let's zoom in and really make sure that our waveform is starting as we see the coffee pouring. And then we can just trim the ending here. And it just adds that little bit more dimension to your video. So this right here is usually called a draft, where you've edited all of your clips together to this music, but we haven't added any sort of color grading or effect. We are going to get into our coloring process. Remember how we had a bunch of different workspaces for Premiere Pro? Well, we're going to go up to Window Workspaces and we're going to go to Coloring, or just go above our program window and we can click Color. Remember, yours might look slightly different than mine. So let's open up our Lumetri Coloring tab. Every clip is going to look different from the next, especially when we're shooting outdoors. The lighting and the coloring and the temperature is always going to be changing. So I want you to start to think of coloring as an effect. It's something that we apply on a per clip basis based on the style and the change that seems appropriate for it. Now, if we want to apply an effect to multiple clips at the same time in Premiere, we use something called an adjustment layer. Think of an adjustment layer as kind of like a cloud. Let's go back to our new item in the corner here and find adjustment layer. Make sure it matches the size of your timeline and hit OK. We can rename this if we want. I'll just name it to color. We use U in the word color in Canada, so I'm just going to type it like that. And then we're going to drag it up on top of our clips. Now, the reason I said to think of this like a cloud is because it's going to create an effect on everything that is underneath it. So let's just throw a couple adjustments on this adjustment layer. As soon as we are out from underneath the adjustment layer, it has no effect on the clip. So you want to be sure that your adjustment layer covers everything that you need it to. So just to touch on this, coloring is a very subjective topic and everybody has their own style and tastes. Now, I don't want to tell you what is right or wrong. It is a very complex process on its own. I have a video dedicated to showing many different styles of color grading, but for our ease, we are just going to drop one of my preset LUTs that I've made specifically for this tutorial. That is in our project files that we downloaded earlier. So let's go do that right now. A dot cube is a color lookup table. So it is essentially a preset coloring that I've made for this video. It's just a light coloring that we're going to use just to make this process a little bit easier. So let's go over to our Lumetri Coloring tab. What we're doing is we're creating a look. So we're going to go to our Creative tab in Lumetri, and where it says Look, we're going to go down, click Browse, and this is where we're going to use our color.cube. We'll hit Open. Now we have a rough color grade to our video, and we can clearly see a difference as I toggle this adjustment layer on and off. As mentioned before, all clips are going to be lit differently. They all have different weather conditions and lighting conditions, so we can still go and individually adjust our video clips. This one at the end of me drinking the coffee, for example, is kind of dark, so we can lift up the shadows, give it a bit more light and saturation. And again, at this very end shot, could use a bit of light, a little bit too gloomy. Feel free to adjust either your adjustment layer or your clips individually as much as you like. Coloring for the most part is very subjective. We have a ton of different options in Lumetri Color, from the basic corrections to the creative, and there's a ton of different sliders to work around this, kind of like Lightroom. So definitely feel free to play around and come up with your own style. Or watch my video on color grading if you want to see some popular styles and different ways to use this. Now let's create a second adjustment layer, and we're going to do something slightly different with it. So we're going to name this Blur, and then we're going to drag it. We're going to trim this to our first clip. The shot at the ending is kind of blurred, so we're going to try and match that sort of style. And what we want to do is go back to our effects tab. We haven't done much in this yet, so let's just type in blur. As you can see, there's a ton of different options for blurring. I think Gaussian will be a perfect one for this. So to apply an effect, you can either drag it on or you can double click and it'll apply to whatever layer is selected. Let's use our slider here and set this as something like, I think 30 is pretty good, but we don't want the full clip to be blurred. So what we're going to do is set a keyframe for it. We'll drag it to the beginning, and then partway through our clip, we're going to hit our reset button so that it goes back to 0. The edges of our clip are super fuzzy. We're going to fix that by clicking Repeat Edge Pixels. It's cool, but it's way too fast. We're going to drag both of our keyframes out a bit, and that way it will stay blurred for longer. The entire area before or after our keyframe is also affected by our keyframe. So in this case, our blur before this keyframe will remain at 33. And everywhere past our end keyframe will remain at 0. Yeah, that's cool. Now, another way we can fade in and out an effect instead of using keyframes is we can just fade out the adjustment layer. So we can set keyframes for the opacity of the adjustment layer, and as the adjustment layer fades out, so does all of its effect. This will be useful when you have multiple effects on one adjustment layer. Now, it's pretty common for a video to fade in. However, our first clip is only approximately 1 second long. Our clip is too short to fade in, so we're just going to leave it the way it is. I think it's sufficient if we just fade out at the end of the video. There are endless opportunities and effects built into Premiere Pro. Go through every single one of them if you want. You can try them out individually or watch other tutorials on specific effects. I just want to make sure you had a basic understanding of how to add and adjust effects as well as use adjustment layers. Now we're ready to move on. So our title is one of the things that is no longer in our Create New page. We have to go all the way up to File, New, and click Legacy Title. Name it whatever you'd like, and when you hit Enter, it's going to bring up this workspace. We have a preview of the frame where our playhead is, and we can just drag and create some text here. This is pretty straightforward. It's just like any other program that works with text, whether it's like After Effects, Illustrator, Photoshop, Microsoft Word, I'm just going to change this because this font is just not good. Change it to Gotham. There's a ton of different options. There's presets at the bottom. We're gonna go up to the top and we're gonna center this. We can adjust this and tweak our text however we want. Now I just want to talk about the alignment. So we go down here to the left and we click center. It's going to center our text box. It's not necessarily centering our text. If your text doesn't take up the majority of the text box, you might want to go ahead and trim it, at least for the vertical axis. For the horizontal, it doesn't really matter. If you have a bunch of space below your words, it's not going to center it properly. I think we're going to change this to medium, just so that we can see it a little better. And scale it up a bit. And we'll just readjust, recenter. Perfect. And now we have a title. So we'll drag it on just like an adjustment layer. We'll trim to the third clip and have it fade out. Now we can go ahead and we can adjust our other clips just so that we can see the text a bit better. So I'm just going to rescale and position this second clip here. And it's the same sort of process for adding a photo or a logo asset. Amazing. Are you noticing that it's getting a lot faster and we are progressing through the rest of this video at a very quick pace? If not, maybe I'm a bad teacher. We are pretty much done here. So it's pretty standard in the industry to add a logo or some text at the end of your video. Let's just do that before we head out. I haven't uploaded this file for you. I'm just gonna quickly import my logo. This works whether it's a PNG and .ai, a .eps. I have a PNG file, so I'm just gonna trim this to the end, and then I'm gonna fade my logo in as our video comes to an end. Now, another way to add text is to simply just use our text tool. We can just click or hit the letter T, we can drag, and then we can start typing. And now our controls are in our effect controls, as you can see under graphics. The main downfall with this is a little bit more difficult to center. The align tools don't work exactly the same as the legacy title. So let's bring up our safe margins here. We can click and highlight the text, and then we can align it ourselves. But the benefit of this is this text box does not take up any space in your project window, if you notice. On the left, we have our legacy title, but we do not have a text box. Now this is super cheesy. I would never actually put text like that, but now you know how to do it. And just like that, we have officially made our edit. And just like that, we have made an edit. Just for dramatic effect, pretend I slammed that shut. I don't want to lose all of the audio I've been recording, so I'm not going to do that right now. Finally, it is time for us to export this video. Let's take a couple minutes to talk about that and do it properly so that it's most optimized for however we're going to share it, post it, watch it, whatever we want. Much like when we're rendering our video, for exporting, we also have to set an in and out point. I'm going to delete that little text box and let's go ahead and export this video. If there's other footage in our sequence, we can either track select forward and delete all of that, or what we can do is just set our out point at the end of our video so that it is the only thing that we have selected. From there, we can either go File, down to Export and Export Media, or we can just click Command M and it's going to bring up our export settings. So let's talk about this real quick. We could go into a ton of depth on this, but for this instance, we're just gonna go with our most typical export. So as you can see, if you have all your settings set properly in your sequence, you can just click that and it will export with the settings from your footage. But if you have mixed footage or mixed assets, sometimes it's easiest just to go and make our own custom. First thing we want to do is select our format. So as you saw before, QuickTime is pretty popular, but that's going to be a really large file size, and for this video we don't need that. We're just going to select H.264. That is the best version of compression. That also just keeps a ton of the resolution. Like, for the most part, people aren't going to see the difference, especially if it's on a phone. So next thing we have to do is select our output name. It default goes to whatever your sequence is named. So to change that, all we have to do is click on it. We can save it to our home folder here, and I'm just gonna name this coffee break. We'll hit save, and then we'll come check out our settings here. So as you can see, it has the proper dimensions, it has the proper frame rate, and we're gonna render this at the maximum depth. If we click on one of these boxes, it will unlock our settings here, and we can change this to whatever we need it to. So if we want it to be 720, we could do that. Or if these are unchecked and they don't actually match what we want to export at, all we have to do is click unmatch source and it'll switch it back. And here's one more setting that I just quickly want to talk about because it is super important, our bitrate settings. So this is our lowest version of bitrate. This kind of just makes a rough estimate on the bitrate that we want, and it goes through your video and tries to keep it at this bitrate. If we go to 2pass, what it does is it has a target, which is going to be our average, and then if we have really intensive scenes, we can change our maximum to be something higher. Or if we go to CBR, that means constant bitrate, which means it promises a very consistent quality of our video. And depending on the size of your export or what this is for, so if this is your final export, you definitely want to maximize your target bitrate. I think for 1080, it's only going to go up to 50, but if we were doing a 4K video or above, we would want to try and get that to 100. Or if we did the 2pass, we could set our target rate to something like 30 and our maximum bitrate 50. So most of the video will end up around 30, and the really difficult spots will be rendered at a higher bitrate. That being said, you can see that our file size has changed a lot. So if we have it at a constant bitrate of 50, it's 90 megabytes. If we had it back down at 10 like we originally did, it's only 18 megabytes. Our video right now is only 15 seconds. This tutorial, for example, is an hour long. So you could imagine if I export it at 50, how big that file size would be. And QuickTime is actually even bigger than that. It really depends. Is this just a draft that you want to review? Is this something you're going to be uploading online, or is this something that you're going to be sending to a client? And do you have the time to export this, and do you have the space to export this? Those are pretty much your main questions. But for the most part, just make sure you always have your maximum depth and maximum render quality selected, and try to stay at least somewhere above 20. YouTube actually has a specific guideline on this, so if you need an exact answer, you can go there and check that out. Exporting for 1080 clips is also going to be a lot different than 4K and above. So I'm going to do a video that kind of just goes over all different types of exports, but this is all we need for now. I'm just going to put this down to 25 because realistically, that's all we would need. It's a healthy size file. If you hit Q, it's going to go to Adobe Media Encoder, which allows you to export this video while still using Premiere for other things, but I find that just takes a lot longer. Or if you're going to export this in multiple sizes, you can queue up multiple different ones and then export them all at once overnight, but I typically just export immediately. So I'm just going to click on export, and here we go. And we did it. We made it. I'm so proud of you. We did it. We now have the general basis to make a video in Adobe Premiere Pro. Feel free to go check out my existing videos and other tutorials. If it wasn't for tutorials, I wouldn't know anything that I know today. I hope that this process was made relatively painless for you. This video was pretty long, but I have weeks of training set up in my course that teaches you how to take this to the next level and really optimize everything that we've just learned to make the best videos that we possibly can. Please remember to subscribe for future videos and tutorials. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope this was a great experience for you.